There was a time, when hearing the words triple A game actually meant something. Yes, it wasn't just a label. It was a promise that you were about to experience something bigger, better, and unlike anything you had played before. Halo, The Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Mass Effect, BioShock, Batman Arkham City, Grand Theft Auto. Each one felt different, each one had its own identity, and every new release felt like an event. People didn't just buy these games, they counted down the days until launch. Midnight releases were packed, gaming forums exploded with excitement. Friends couldn't wait to talk about what they had just discovered, because back then, developers weren't simply competing to make the biggest game, they were competing to make the most memorable one. Every studio had something that made it unique. Bethesda gave players worlds they could disappear into for hundreds of hours. BioWare became famous for unforgettable characters and meaningful choices. Valve constantly experimented with ideas that changed gaming forever. Rockstar raised the bar for open world storytelling, and Blizzard, at its peak, set standards that entire genres tried to follow. Nobody wanted to copy everyone else. They wanted to become the studio that everyone else copied. That competition pushed the entire industry forward. Every year felt unpredictable. Every major announcement sparked excitement. Because players had no idea what they were about to see next. Sometimes it was a revolutionary gameplay mechanic. Sometimes it was technology that seemed years ahead of its time. And sometimes where it was a story that stayed with you long after the credits rolled. Of course, not every AAA game was a masterpiece. There were disappointments, there were failures, there were games that never lived up to the hype, but those failures were the exception, not the expectation. Back then, when a major publisher announced a brand new franchise, players didn't immediately ask, how many microtransactions will it have? They didn't wonder if it would launch unfinished, or whether the roadmap would promise features that should have been there on day one. Instead, they asked something much simpler. What incredible experience are we about to get? That question says everything about how different gaming used to feel, because somewhere along the way, the industry's biggest studios stopped chasing memorable experiences and started chasing something else, something far more predictable, something far more profitable. And that is where this story really begins. Because the truth is, what I'd already say, gaming didn't suddenly become worse. Developers didn't simply forget how to make incredible games. The people building these worlds were just as passionate, just as creative, and often more skilled than ever before. Technology kept improving. Game engines became more powerful. Artists could create worlds that previous generations could only dream about. Developers had better tools, better hardware, larger teams, more experience. On paper, everything should have been getting better. So why did so many games begin to feel so familiar? Why did players slowly stop saying, I've never seen anything like this before, and start saying, this reminds me of another game? That change didn't happen overnight. It happened, one successful game at a time. Because success has a strange way of changing an industry. When a game becomes a massive hit, people don't just celebrate it, they study it. Publishers ask, what made it successful? Investors ask, can it happen again? And executives ask, how do we reduce the chances of failure? At first, those sound like reasonable questions. In fact, they are reasonable questions. But over time, those questions slowly replaced another one, a question that once defined this industry. What have players never experienced before? That single shift changed everything, because creating something completely new is exciting, but it's also unpredictable, and unpredictability is expensive. Back in the early days of AAA gaming, a failed project was painful. Studios lost money, publishers took a hit, developers moved on and tried something different. Failure wasn't celebrated, but it was accepted as part of taking creative risks. Today, the stakes are completely different. Modern AAA games aren't just expensive. They're among the most expensive entertainment products, ever created. Development can take 5, 6, sometimes even 8 years. Thousands of people can work on a single project: artists, programmers, writers, designers, animators, voice actors, quality assurance teams, marketing departments, studios spread across multiple countries. By the time a modern AAA game launches, hundreds of millions of dollars may already have been spent, and once you spend that much money, failure stops feeling like a creative lesson. It starts feeling like a financial disaster. Imagine walking into a meeting knowing your company has already invested $300 million into one game. Now imagine someone raising their hand and saying, I have an idea. It's unlike anything players have ever seen. It might completely change gaming. It also might fail. Would you take that risk? Maybe. But would your investors, would your shareholders, would the board, whose job is to protect hundreds of millions of dollars? Probably not, because the bigger the investment, the smaller the appetite for uncertainty. So, and that's where something fascinating happened. The industry didn't stop innovating just because creativity disappeared. It stopped innovating because predictability became more valuable. Because once predictability became the goal, the entire design philosophy started to change. Publishers no longer looked at a successful game as a single success. They looked at it as a blueprint, a formula, something that could be repeated again and again and again. Because why gamble on an entirely new idea when a proven one already exists? Imagine one studio spends years creating a revolutionary feature. Players love it, critics praise it, the game sells millions of copies. Naturally, other studios notice, and that's completely normal. Every creative industry learns from success. Movies do it, books do it, music does it. Gaming is no different. The problem, he said, was never inspiration. The problem then was imitation, because inspiration asks, how can we build on this idea? The imitation asks, how can we copy this idea? And those are two very different questions. Slowly, the industry began chasing the same trends. Open worlds became bigger, maps became larger, objectives became more numerous, crafting systems started appearing everywhere, role-playing game mechanics showed up in franchises that had never needed them before. Skill trees, experience points, loot rarity, collectibles, upgrade materials, watchtowers, enemy outposts. You started seeing the same ingredients mixed into completely different games, not because every game needed them, but because they had already worked somewhere else. And individually, none of those mechanics are bad. Open worlds can be incredible. Crafting, can add depth. Role-playing game progression can make players feel stronger. The issue wasn't the mechanics themselves. It was how often they were being used, because eventually it stopped feeling like every game had its own identity and started feeling like every game was built from the same checklist. Think about it. How many times have you climbed a tower just to reveal more of the map? How many camps have you cleared that looked almost identical to the last one? How many collectible icons have appeared across a giant map before you even took your first real step into the world? At some point, many players stopped asking, what surprises are waiting for me? And started asking, how many hours is this game going to take? Because somewhere along the way, bigger quietly became confused with better. Maps grew larger, quest logs grew longer, more systems, more upgrades, more activities, more markers, more content, but not necessarily more memorable experiences. And that's an easy trap to fall into, because more looks impressive A bigger map, no, sounds like progress. 100 hours of gameplay sounds like value. Thousands of collectibles, or look like more things to do, but players don't remember games, because the map was larger. They remember the moments that made them feel something. No one remembers the 200th bandit camp. They remember stepping into Rapture, for the first time. They remember leaving Vault 101. They remember seeing the Halo ring, stretch across the sky. Those weren't memorable, because they were bigger. They were memorable because they were new. And that's the difference. Innovation creates memories. Repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity, it's like, is comfortable. For publishers, comfortable feels safe. For players, comfortable eventually becomes predictable, which raises an uncomfortable question. If every major studio starts chasing the same proven formula, who's still experimenting? Who's still taking the risks that once pushed gaming forward? Because if the biggest companies have the most to lose, then maybe the future of innovation was never going to come from the biggest companies at all. Maybe it was going to come from somewhere else, somewhere with far less money, far smaller teams, and far less to lose. By now, the formula was working. Safe games were making safe profits, but something else was quietly changing. Games were no longer competing, just for your money. They were competing for your time, because in a world where thousands of games are fighting for your attention, the most valuable player isn't the one who spends the most. It's the one who never leaves. And that's when gaming slowly became an engagement business. Daily rewards, weekly challenges, battle passes, limited time events, seasonal content, not because every one of these ideas is bad. In fact, many of them can be genuinely fun. The problem is what they slowly replaced. Instead of asking, how do we make every hour unforgettable, the question became, how do we make players come back tomorrow? It's a subtle difference, but it changes how games are designed. Quests become longer, progress becomes slower, maps become larger, checklists become endless, not because those things are automatically more fun, but because they keep you playing. And somewhere along the way, many players started noticing something strange. They weren't playing because they were excited. They were playing because they didn't want to fall behind. Finish today's challenges, claim today's reward, complete this week's objectives. Don't miss the event. Don't waste your streak. The game wasn't asking for your attention anymore. It was asking for your routine. Of course, there are still incredible triple chalice games that respect your time, and there are live service games that are genuinely enjoyable. This isn't about saying every modern game is guilty. It's about recognizing the direction the industry slowly moved, because when success is measured by hours played instead of memories made, something important gets lost. And maybe that's why so many of us look at our massive game libraries and somehow feel like playing nothing at all. But here's the interesting part. Innovation never disappeared. It simply changed address. While the biggest studios were trying to avoid failure, smaller teams could afford to embrace risk. Because when your game isn't carrying a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars, you don't have to convince a room full of investors. You only have to convince players that your idea is worth trying, and that freedom changes everything. It allows developers to experiment, to break conventions, to build mechanics, that sound completely ridiculous until you actually play them. A card game like that feels like a psychological horror story, a detective game where knowledge itself routes becomes your progression system, a roguelike where every defeat teaches you something new. Games that didn't ask what worked before, they asked, what if we tried something different. Of course, not every experiment succeeds. Many indie games fail, many are forgotten, but that's the nature of taking risks, because every unforgettable idea starts as an uncertainty, and sometimes those uncertain ideas go on to inspire the entire industry, just like they always have. The truth is, players never stopped wanting something new. They never stopped wanting to be surprised. They never stopped chasing that feeling of discovering a game they couldn't stop thinking about. Maybe that's why some of the most memorable gaming experiences of the last decade didn't come from for the biggest budgets. They came from the biggest ideas, and perhaps that's the reminder the industry needs. Technology will continue to improve, budgets will continue to grow, worlds will become even larger, but none of those things can replace the feeling of experiencing something you've never seen before. So, where does that leave us? Are AAA games doomed? Well, I don't think so, because this was never a story about talent disappearing or developers forgetting how to make great games. It was a story about an industry that slowly learned to fear uncertainty. And when risk becomes something to avoid, so does surprise. The truth is, we've never had better technology, never had more talented developers, never had more powerful hardware. Yet somehow, the moments we remember the most rarely come from bigger maps or higher resolutions. They come from the moments that made us stop and say, I've never experienced anything like this before, because that's what made us fall in love with gaming in the first place, not because games were perfect, but because they were unpredictable. The good news is that feeling hasn't disappeared. It's still out there. Every time a developer chooses an original idea over a familiar formula, every time a studio takes a chance instead of playing it safe, every time a game dares to surprise us, and maybe that's the future gaming needs. Not just bigger worlds, not just better graphics, not just longer games, but bolder ideas, because in the end, the games we'll remember won't be the ones that played it the safest. They'll be the ones that had the courage to try something new. So the next time you discover a game that makes you lose track of time, that surprises you, that reminds you why you fell in love with gaming, support it. So, because every game that changes this industry starts with someone willing to take a risk, and maybe the next unforgettable experience is already being built by a team that simply refused to play it safe.